My name is Megan Skidmore, and this is the Beyond the Shadow of Doubt podcast. My goal is to bring the traditionally somewhat taboo topic of doubt and questioning out of the shadows of shame and into the sunlight. I am a life transitions coach, certified through the Life Coach School, and I work with parents of LGBTQ kiddos of a conservative faith background. Welcome to episode 4, Doubts, Mental Health, and Suicide Prevention. Last week, I went to an Imagine Dragons concert. I love Imagine Dragons. I was reminded of how grateful I am for lead singer Dan Reynolds' openness regarding his mental health struggles. If you know anything about Dan, he actively works to break the stigma by talking about it and normalizing feelings of anxiety, depression, and also having a therapist whom he sees regularly. He mentions it pretty much anytime he has gives a concert. Having my own struggles with mental health since my teen years, I'm so grateful for a different world that my children are growing up in. We do talk a lot more about mental health than, say, my parents and their parents' generations and so on. The more we talk, the less shame can have a hold on our life experience. And incidentally, the more we talk about mental health, the more it improves. So since this is the Beyond the Shadow of Doubt podcast, let's address for a minute how doubts and either the allowing of or denying of them can affect our mental health. Now, a little bit of denial can be an effective coping mechanism. More often, however, denial prevents us from overcoming our problems. Being in denial when it comes to our faith, or in other words, ignoring that you have doubts or questions, is to not allow them or to not acknowledge that the uncertainty exists. To deny oneself the opportunity to have doubts is to question its connection with reality, or in other words, that it actually exists or is real. It is in essence expressing that it's hypothetical. To ignore, push away, or deny our doubts over time takes a toll on one's mental psyche. So when it comes to matters of faith, one must use not just our mind, but also heart and soul in determining our feelings, our conclusions, and courses of action. So sometimes we use expressions such as, "What does your heart tell you?" Or "Connect with your inner self to know what to do." Or maybe you've used "The spirit or universe will guide you." Or possibly your inner wisdom will know what is best. And this is the quintessential example of engaging in the human process of weighing things out, including the pros and the cons, going through the decision-making process, utilizing reasoning skills, studying, pondering, engaging in prayer and or meditation, and so on. All of these things require complex human thought, and they bring growth. But here's the but. If there is no impetus, right? No reason for which to engage. In other words, no looming questions, concerns, or doubts, then why engage? Why begin the process in the first place of discovery? When we ignore, push down, or deny our very adept human brain this privilege of going through this process, we cultivate unhealthy mental behavior, our thoughts, and run the risk of mental atrophy for ourselves, for lack of a better word. So that's like another way of saying unhealthy thoughts lead to unhealthy feelings and actions. I recently listened to the Fight Like a Mother podcast by Cheryl Cardall, episode number 44, called In the Trenches, OCD and Religious Scrupulosity with Jill Freestone. I highly recommend this episode, particularly for those suffering from OCD and scrupulosity. At one point in the episode, Cheryl said, one of the things that helps it, referring to scrupulosity, is the having the gray area, not having the black and white thinking, and not being sure about anything, end quote. So my takeaway from that is, in other words, allowing the uncertainty, giving permission for doubts and for having questions. That is what helps. It's a really great discussion. I'll leave a link in the show notes for you to go and listen. So what is the moral of all of this that I'm sharing today? Having doubts is actually so healthy and normal, so much healthier for us mentally, emotionally, and spiritually speaking in terms of faith. So shifting gears a little bit, September is Suicide Prevention Month, and this week specifically is set aside for suicide awareness. Part of my life coach certification included a suicide prevention class through the QPR Institute. In the same way that CPR can literally save the life of a person who is choking or stopped breathing, QPR can save a person's life who may be, quote, choking or no longer breathing mentally or emotionally. Of course, I'm speaking metaphorically. However, the effectiveness of the intervention is real. Q stands for question, such as saying, I've noticed you've been absent a lot lately. Is everything okay? Or maybe something, hey, you haven't answered my text for a few days. I'm concerned about you. Do you want to talk? P stands for persuade. Talk to your friend about options, ways to get help, possible resources. Persuade them that they will actually be helpful and persuade them to go. And the R stands for refer. So provide the actual information to these appropriate resources, and if needed, or including offering to assist them to physically get to the resources. There is free QPR training offered both by Mama Dragons and liftinlove.org, both of them nonprofit organizations. I highly recommend this training. It takes about an hour and a half of your time. I'll leave links to both in my show notes. I hope by talking specifically about suicide today that it encourages you to be courageous. Give yourselves permission to talk about it with family, friends, and loved ones. Not talking about it doesn't make it go away, and not talking about it or showing discomfort around the subject amplifies the shame surrounding it. If you have questions about today's episode, let's have a chat. Your first visit with me is always complimentary. Find me at my website, https://meganskidmorecoaching.com, where you can also connect with me on social. Thank you so much for joining me today. Until next time.